Hello, welcome to the Viewpoint. I am Mahmoud Mboj. Today we want to sort of outline a country profile of NGO activity in this country. One report that I was reading earlier says that today NGOs form a prominent part of what is called the development machine, a vast institutional and interdisciplinary nexus of official agencies, practitioners, consultants, scholars, and other miscellaneous experts producing and consuming knowledge about the developing world. But according to Kofi Annan, NGOs are the conscience of humanity. Yet you've got others who say that NGOs are here really representing the global status quo. They embody the neoliberal ideology in their very focus. Now, as my guest, I've got the former chair of Tango, really, the Association of Non-Governmental Organizations in the Gambia, Mr. John Charles Nyai.
Well, Mr. Wood, thank you for having me in your program. And thank you also for the good work you continue to do to educate the masses with your program.
Absolutely, we are really in the same business in many ways.
Indeed.
You know, John, I tried to resist this temptation, as it were, to ask this first question, because of course we've known each other since we were at high school.
Yes.
We used to hang out at a place called Pepsi Corner.
Pepsi Corner, Fajara.
That's it, Fajara. And at that time, tango was a drink. So my first question is bound to be, John, how have you moved from Pepsi to tango?
Well, interesting question.
In what? Should we say 30 years?
Yeah, well,
something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, as you rightly said, I mean, in high school days, we used to chill out at Pepsi Corner, you know, the attire place and tease each other.
The
and
discussions.
You know, have football matches and things like that. Warga, I mean, Potimeo and all these games that we used to play. And obviously, I remember you were a prolific striker then, and I was a goalkeeper then. You know, so we were on opposite sides. But the transition really has been one with growth, age, focus, and like you know, I mean, they will tell you that Pepsi, Coke are very toxic drinks. I think tango is more of a subtle drink. I think as we age, we have moved to drinking tango, you know, the orange juice, you know. But again, it's moving from high school days, maybe when you are less focused, to now impacting your society and, you know, giving what you can to ensure that you have a better society. So I believe the transition has been, yes, a long time, but definitely we've moved from Pepsi to teasing each other and teasing the girls that used to pass and things like that, and talk about all kinds of things, politics and all kinds of things happening to where we are now. But it's good also seeing that, you know, a good number of us are now in responsible positions and impacting our society. So we've really moved. I think all of us are tangoing now rather than Pepsi.
Absolutely. So now to tango.
Yeah.
So tell me the beginnings of your association with tango.
Well, I started associating with tango in 1999. I had just left, I think, Social Security and Housing Finance, and started working at SOS Children's Villages, which is an NGO. And as you know, Tango was formed in 1983 as an umbrella body for NGOs in the Gambia and community-based organizations, basically to bring coordination, capacity building, and also to be a reference point between, you know, civil NGOs in the country and government, be an interface, as it were. And over time, Tango has really evolved to be a very strategic voice when it comes to amplifying the voices of the NGO community and the local community, also the grassroots.
Can we put in here numbers? Do we know about the number of registered NGOs? I was looking for it, and according to Access Gambia, says there are 180 registered NGOs in this country. What's your membership?
Well, the membership of Tango was one time up to 70. But you see, the number of NGOs registered in the country doesn't reflect the number of NGOs under Tango.
All right. Exactly.
NGOs,
That's exactly the point.
NGOs are registered.
Absolutely.
One, you register as a charity under the Ministry of Justice, and then you register under the NGO affairs.
Exactly.
Now, when you register under the NGO affairs, Tango has its own criteria for eligibility of members, and it is voluntary. So you'll discover that for that 180, over 100 are not members of Tango. And that is why sometimes when people say NGOs in Yungchidekabi, they are doing whatever they are doing, you cannot also blame Tango. Because Tango has its membership. We look at our membership, they send their reports and all that. We visit their offices. And if you are not also complying with our regulations, we can deregister you. You know, and some of, when we looked at our list recently, we discovered that some members are also not existing. You know, I mean, either the person that started it had died and things like that, and, you know, we had funding issues, and they have closed, they have folded up. So you have now, maybe we're looking at around 40 that are active members, paid up members of the organization. There are other dormant members, but since they are not paying their contributions and complying with our rules, I'm sure the new board is going to have to deal with that aspect of cleaning the membership. But now also one of the other things we've done, we've also discovered that from 2017 to date, a lot of non-governmental organizations that are civil society based organizations have also come onto the fore. Human rights organizations, you know, are more now prominent. So we have now reviewed our constitution and made it open so that Tango now becomes a home for civil society.
Yes, so both international and local?
Yes, both international and local. And now we are looking at other groups like the Bar Association can apply to be part of, you know, Tango. Because when you broaden the platform and you have more civil society organizations, there is better coordination, there is better amplification of the voices of civil society, and you'll find out that we will be more focused. So there are a lot of times that people will say, yen Tango or yen civil society. But who is civil society?
That's exactly,
you know, because it's not everybody that shouts
absolutely
that is necessarily part of civil society.
And because of the nature of social media now, it's very difficult to make some of these distinctions. But here, that is it. I wanted to make that kind of distinction, that not every NGO is a part of Tango.
Exactly.
So that's clear.
And not every, I mean, even civil society, there are members of civil society, because we've opened up to welcome them part of our activities. There are people that even felt that they are automatic members of Tango, but the constitution did not allow. So now we have to formalize their membership into Tango so that we can have a more structured body. And so that is where we are now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we get to the work of Tango, particularly in relation to, I think it will be only fair for you to put it in relation to your tenure. Whilst you were there, what you did, what you thought you achieved, the challenges, so that we'll see how these things work.
Okay. Let me maybe go back a bit. Right. Tango is NGOs that are working in different fields. So you have NGOs that are in agriculture, NGOs that are in education, youth, children, women, health. So you have a plethora of intervention areas in NGOs. And that is why sometimes when people say, well, you people during Jammeh's days, what were you doing? Where were you? You know, it's funny because we were here. We were here. The NGOs were doing what they were doing. I work with YMCA. YMCA has been here from 1979, affecting the young people, impacting the lives of young people, training, vocational skills training. You have CRS, you have the Caritas, you know, you have...
Maybe they expected the NGOs to provide a kind of moral voice to condemn what was going on. How would you respond to that?
Now, you know, NGOs were formed in this country to, at that time, when most of us were being formed, our focus, let me give YMCA as an instance. Your focus is youth empowerment. So you are training young people. There was no need for activism. There was no need to push human rights issues. Now, when the human rights violations started in the country, there was a time Action Aid started a program. They called it rights-based approach to programming, which means that if you are looking at education, you look at education as it's a fundamental right for the children to be educated. So don't just make it as it's just any other program. It's a fundamental right, and that gives it the credibility and the power for it to be an intervention area. So they were going around sensitizing people. And somebody told Jame then that...
But we have to be honest here, because really with NGOs, particularly with these international NGOs, when the sitting government really doesn't like your presence in there, they might decide to kick you out.
Well, this was the thing.
This is exactly the key. No, in other words, you know that now sort of good governance is almost, it's part of your agenda, promoting good governance.
Yeah.
So people are saying that you saw the awful things that the former president was doing, but you never really attack this, calling a spade a spade.
But let me tell you, this is what I'm saying. When we started, when NGOs started in the country, there was no issue of governance.
Good governance. So that wasn't part of it.
So it was not part of your mandate. Your thing was, I'm into agriculture. Let me support the farmers in their agriculture. Let me support the young people. So when things started, and this is why I'm bringing the Action Aid thing. When Action Aid said they are going to have a rights-based approach to programming, somebody went and told the president that these people are coming with human rights. And Action Aid was given 72 hours to close and to send the director then, who was non-Gambian, packing. Yes. From that time, I think any sensible NGO would say, okay, since this issue of rights maybe is becoming a hot thing to touch, let me focus on my area and possibly put on blinkers for your survival. Because they will tell you, even in war, survival is critical.
But how would you judge that? I mean, for us, sort of, we tend to heroize, as it were, people who will stand their ground because they believe that they stand on what is right.
Yeah, but you see, let me say this, Mojo.
So the political compromises.
Sometimes, if I die now fighting for a cause, this country, we have not gotten to a place where people are going to rise up and say, because John is dead, we have to do this change. So you begin to ask yourself, how many other ways are there for me to effect change? My survival is important. I need to stay alive to keep my voice alive. So you may decide that, okay, if this is becoming too hot, let me look at my focus and deal with my focus. I mean, and for me, it was like, okay, you got to a point. Let me tell you, there are risks that we took even during Jame days. And people maybe will tell you that we are not doing anything. It's a lie. Tango was training security officers on how to handle accused persons, on how to handle criminals, how to guarantee their rights. We have trained the police, we've trained the army on a number of occasions. But what you do is to train a fraction.
Absolutely.
And this fraction, this fraction you are training or building their capacity are not necessarily maybe the decision makers.
And then you also realize that in the end, what effect has it had, given that we are constantly complaining about police brutality, or the army this, or that, and all sorts of things. The end product.
Under a dictatorship, really you would not say we had any impact. But let's look at post-dictatorship. I can tell you a number of instances. For instance, you remember there was a Gorgimbu abuse of a young guy. Do you know that the Human Rights Commission formed a core group?
He appeared before the TRRC.
No. Apart from the TRC,
yes.
There was a time he abused
with the PRU.
Yes.
And he was suspended, wasn't it? There was a time that he was suspended. Was it before the suspension?
Before the suspension. What happened? Gorgimbu was in charge of anti-crime. A guy, they said they arrested some people and he hit the guy on the crotch, and the guy sustained some injuries and all that. And the guy reported the matter to the police and reported to Human Rights and the police. Human Rights wrote to the police And the police wanted to do an investigation. Human rights said, look, we cannot allow you to do an investigation because you may be compromised. The IGP then, Job, said, okay, then we will allow the human rights to form a committee. The human rights formed a committee. The police were represented. Civil society was represented. Bar association was represented. We did our findings, made recommendations, and the police paid compensation to this guy. And then I think they reassigned Gore, we moved to another thing. Under dictatorship, that will never happen.
Okay, granted. But here, I think perhaps here what I'm more interested in, you've already touched on it, the idea of this evolution of NGOs.
Yeah.
So fine, in the beginning, some historians will tell you perhaps around the 80s, really, with the IMF, World Bank, austerity programs, then suddenly government couldn't provide socially, there was social spending, so NGOs came in and all of that, but then they really didn't talk about politics, didn't judge much.
Yeah.
But again, by the time you came into the picture, now good governance was on the cards.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. Well, by the time I took over leadership of Tango in 2017.
2017.
Now, 2017 was the time of the transition.
Yes.
So, in fact, as an individual, I would say my power really got to me in 2017 because I was now leading, and my voice should be made loud. I'm not too sure whether if I was in Tango leadership before, during Jame days, whether I would also be very silent, because
absolutely,
I think, knowing myself, I can be very stubborn. And there are decisions we took, even when Jame was here. The coalition was meeting in my office.
It all depends on the political context. In many all choices really depend to a large degree on political context. Granted.
Indeed.
So you came in. What was it like? What state of affairs did you find in there? Or perhaps more appropriately, what did you do? How does Tango do the work of coordination?
Well, let me say, when we came in 2017, obviously we had this transition government, and from day one, we have been shouting that, I remember in February, March or so, meeting with the UN bodies that, would come, and all these international organizations, and we will tell them, you must tell the government, you must keep the government in check. And I remember those days, they will tell us, well, they are a new government, allow them. I said, we cannot allow them to settle. You have to put the pressure from day one. And somebody said, well, they have to learn on the job. And I said I remember Dr. Chambers, I said...
But don't you think there's a bit sort of too much power for civil society, unaccountable in many ways, unelected body, to say over the elected body, telling the elected body what to do, and you are not adjudicating, you are not part of the judiciary.
Who elected them? Is it not? Are we not part of the people that elected them?
No, but that is different.
No, but
they went through an election process.
Exactly. But
with you went through a selection process, which is completely different.
But who elected them? It is we the people.
But that's a different matter. You've moved on to a different point. The particular point here I want to talk about is that with you are unelected. That is obvious. You are selected using whatever criteria.
I agree.
These people were elected directly.
Who are you saying is selected?
You are an elector. You elect. You are part of the electorate.
Yes.
Granted.
But I was also elected by my constituency, which is civil society, to lead. No, listen. Now, what civil society does is to be able to amplify the voices of the masses. Where government misses it, and I think I heard the president recently say, civil society should be partners in government. I have not seen under my leadership where we have undermined this government in any way. If anything, I can tell you a number of occasions where we would call people in government to say, well, we hear this is happening. What are you doing about it? Can we meet and discuss? Because that's partnership.
But what's your role?
As civil society?
As this particular organization called Tango.
Yeah.
Because civil society, as we just agreed, is a much broader canvas.
Yeah.
So Tango is just one chunk, if you like, within this broader thing. So what exactly have you defined as your role?
Your role is one, to bring an umbrella body and bring your constituents, your members together. One, you have to build their capacities in different areas.
So bring them to do what?
No.
What are they supposed to deliver?
Everybody is doing their own thing. I mean, people are in agriculture, people are in, how do you call it, in health, in education. So if 5 NGOs are in agriculture, doing their agricultural activities, sometimes your role is to coordinate so that there is no duplication of efforts. To now say, okay, you are all members of Tango. Why is it that everybody is in URR? Can you look at another area that you could have intervention in? In education, how can we come together, join our forces, leverage on each other's strengths, and support each other so that you can have a greater impact? Then also the other role is to be a watchdog to government. Like you are saying.
Who gave you the role?
No, but
is it self-appointment?
No, but let me ask you, Butch. If I am the one that voted for you to come into power, do I not have a right to hold you to account in your actions and your activities?
Absolutely.
And that is what we do. So individually and collectively, we could say we are now holding government to account because we represent the people. And the people that we represent, you go to the communities. There are communities you go to, they will say, thank God for the NGOs. Because if it had not been for the NGOs, simple drinking water, we would not have had. Vocational skills, we would not have had. Entrepreneurship skills, we would not have had. Let me ask a question. How much is the government, how much has government put into youth development in this country? Let's go and find out. Most of the youth development entrepreneurship that is happening in this country is from outside. It's from NGOs and development partners.
In many ways, it has been agreed. Come to health or many sectors, most of the funding we get from donors.
Yep.
That much one has to accept. But let me ask you this: why is it that suddenly good governance was on the agenda? What brought about the change?
Well, it's simple. You go through a period where you know that you have been dealt a bad blow by a regime that has violated all aspects and principles of good governance. Now you have a second chance as a nation. Are you going to sit and fold your hands and allow a new government to just have its own way? No. You would say, as a wise citizen, I mean, I know people would say that...
But a lot of people will say that this idea of civil society, NGOs, these are mainly imports.
No, but much.
In the 80s, you know, Save the Children, whoever, they were the ones who came in here. Right. There was an agenda, then therefore they stimulated our own.
Let me ask you.
What do you think of? What do you make of that?
Let me ask you a question. You said you knew me from childhood. Am I imported? I'm a Gambian.
No, we're talking about the institution, not the individual.
No, but this is the
institution.
No, but what I'm coming. I am a Gambian. The people that are in civil society, they are Gambians. We are not stupid. We are not blind to the realities of our community. We are not blind to the challenges of our country.
But we're talking about two different things.
No.
I'm talking about these things. We call it
they came from outside.
CSO, NGO. I mean, the very fact that we've given them these categories, really, they mean that it's an institution.
Forget the name.
So I'm not talking about individuals.
It's what?
I'm talking about institutions.
Forget the name.
But it matters. But it matters.
It matters to some extent. But it is what that is being done. As a Gambian, CSO, NGO, or whatever, I have a responsibility. I, John Charles Njai, have a responsibility to ensure that my government does the biddings of the people that elected them. Let me tell you one thing. You know, one of the things that has inspired.
But you still haven't engaged with or confronted the idea of these NGOs or CSOs as an institution.
No, but
and it matters.
No, but as an institution,
and it matters.
What do you want? What do you want to know about what we do as an institution? I've told you the areas of intervention.
Absolutely, and then the beginnings.
Yes.
Maybe the evolution in itself will show you perhaps greater forces at work.
But this is what I'm saying.
The invisible hand, if you like, of international politics, pressures.
You see, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Do you know a lot of international organizations want civil society to be engaged in gay rights advocacy? You know? Have you seen?
Because most people, you do not believe in it.
Well, so that's what. That's the same principle. If you bring something that I don't believe in it, I'm not going to be advocating for it. You understand? So, I mean, yeah, Jammeh used to use this thing that, yes, it is these international organizations we are doing the biddings of foreigners. At my age, nobody can influence what I would do for my country. And I will not bring and allow any negative agenda to come, no matter what money you are giving. But what I'm saying is, and you see, it's a global village. And the international partners and everybody, they come with their agenda, of course. But it is left to you, the individual heading an organization, whether you are going to accept or not accept.
But you need them to fund. You need them
my
for
brother,
funding.
you know how many
Saying.
fundings we have turned down because they come with strings attached that maybe you don't agree with. So there are times that you allow it to go. If I don't believe in what you are bringing, I'm not putting my hand. I tell people that civil society work is not to enrich yourself. If it's to enrich myself, I would have worked in a bank or somewhere. I am very articulate. I mean, I can convince people. I could have done marketing for some organization or whatever. But there was a passion, there has been this passion in me that humanity counts. So what caused the transition? As I said, Jammeh dealt us a bad blow. We woke up in 2017, have a new leadership. And it was our resolve that never again will any government come and deal us a bad blow. So yes, we are hard on the Barrow government, but it's because of where we are coming from. And every Gambian, including the people in government, should now say, look, indeed we have gone through a bad patch. We cannot go through that place. And to a very large extent, now talking about influence, you know, we have come some way. We are not where we want to be, but we have come some way in our democracy. And we must give credit to the government for opening that space and allowing these kinds of engagements. I can tell you, I mean, numerous instances where we have sat with ministers, ministries, where we have made some noise, issued press statements, and the government has listened. So you are asking about the impact and the influence, that is it.
Absolutely.
I can tell you about negotiations that we've gotten to. I can tell you about selection processes that we've gotten to for the Human Rights Commission, the TRRC, where civil society participated.
You're becoming very powerful. Oh, absolutely. Everybody knows that. Perhaps the problem is, some people call it unaccountable power. You have accumulated so much power that you will tell government that you can do this and you cannot do that, and the like. They say you've taken too much power. But here,
I disagree.
Okay, all right.
I disagree.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But what I really want to focus on here is something like this. Mm-hmm. The argument, the criticism often put against NGOs is that the reason why in the 80s, when you had this explosion of NGOs, they would just come for projects and the technical fixes and the like. They didn't say much about what government was doing because the masters, this was the period of the Cold War. They didn't want to touch that. The international powers wanted, if you like, their allies, as it were, their satellite states. But then around the 90s, something changed. The Cold War was gone. Then what was to take its place? That's when we started seeing good governance in place. This was really in the 90s. In other words, the charities created in the West after Second World War, going on, suddenly they have no use over there. Now somehow they've been sent over as if they're the new missionaries. Remember the missionaries of colonialism? So you're seen in this light as the new missionaries, if you like, of the new neo-colonialism, if one can call it that. And the agenda, if you can see the focus, stuff like good governance, they put it in there. And this whole new notion of development, suddenly development became a term in there. And now gender, equality. These are all that terms, the agenda essentially set over there. Because over here people don't even look at that. Look at gender, for instance, gender inequality. People think that it's normal. We tried International Assembly to do something about it. It didn't go through.
Yeah.
We will never set gender issues as a priority, given the nature of our society. That's a difficult thing to say.
I get
so
it.
all of that needs to come from outside. You represent the agenda of this international, they call it neoliberal consensus.
But let me ask, if, for instance, our education is equally influenced by the neoliberal whatever, by the West. You know, we have the Western education, but do we say because it's coming from the West, we cannot accept it? The question we have to ask.
No, but let me ask. When I say neoliberal, it's more of an economic theory. You don't really understand political economy.
But let me give you
slightly.
Whatever development agenda the West has and has brought home here, we have to ask ourselves the question, do we really need it? For instance, good governance. Having gone through what Yahya Jammeh has taken us through, don't we need good governance in this country? Don't we need government that is accountable to the people? And let me get to your point about us being too powerful. Government still, it's an elected government. There are things that, I mean, you know how many things we have shouted about that government has not changed? We have shouted about a lot of things.
That is precisely it. What is your effectiveness in driving this good governance agenda? Whereas when it comes to projects and the technical fixes, everybody will agree that NGOs have made differences to people's lives in many areas. But this new added agenda of good governance, what impact are you having?
We are having an impact because that's what I'm saying. Where have you ever seen the police compensate somebody that police brutality is a victim of police brutality?
Drop in the ocean. Someone might say, drop in the ocean. The general picture is the same.
Do you know how many? No. It's not the same. No, things have changed.
Oh, absolutely. There's no denying it. We're from the Yahya Jammeh's dictatorship and all the nasty stuff. They're all gone, obviously. Yet the operational style hasn't really changed.
It has not changed because the laws are still there. And that's why we are shouting that the laws need to change. Now, this is it. This is a democracy. In a democracy, you know, I was chatting with somebody recently and I said the dictatorship mindset is still affecting Gambians because we are still victims of dictatorship. Because in dictatorship, you want something today, it has to happen today. In democracy, there have to be discussions. There has to be negotiations. There have to be political will from the different political players to come to a consensus. And that is why in democracy, you go by the rule of law. And the reason why things have not changed is because, and that's where we have problem with government. We say you cannot say Jammeh did ABC in 22 years, but you come in 7 years, the same rules, the same laws that governed Jammeh and what he was doing are the same laws in place. So are you really serious as a government? And you have to remind them and keep reminding them until they make a conscious effort to change these things. And that is a process.
But as I listen to you, I get the impression that government, Barrow's government, when it came in, there was a reality in place. However one conceptualized this reality. We were talking about then, the discussion used to be, look at the institutions. They've all been degraded.
Of course.
You just cannot come and sack people, you know what I mean? It's a whole wave, it's a long time before you can really clean the system. So everybody sort of knew these things about the rottenness of it. So the continuation, that was why some writers said, New Gambia, what are you talking about? You are just so embedded in that dictatorship that it will take you a very, very long time in transforming this. But it started from such a low threshold that it was really easy for Barrow to make any improvement.
But you see, this is
extremely low threshold.
It's like you are, if somebody has dug a hole 6 feet or 10 feet deep, and you start filling the hole, if you are on the outside, you think nothing is happening. But let me tell you, do you know how many regulations, laws have been changed? Do you know how many policies have been developed? I know people will say implementation of policy is one thing, but the foundation of a nation is the laws. So now you could get, I mean, do you know how many people Jammeh has used the law to do whatever he wants to do with? So if you don't change those laws, you still open the door for violations of rights to take place. So that is why we continue. One of the things that it will interest you to know as a journalist is the passing of the Access to Information Law. It was initiated by civil society. Have you ever had in any of the countries necessarily where civil society has passed a law, has put a law before government accepted it and passed it unanimously in parliament within a space of 2 years? It has not happened. That is the influence of civil society.
Things do happen.
The negotiations on rights of human rights, when people are arrested, we make sure that the due process is followed and put pressure where pressure needs to apply. There are communications that
absolutely. But let me ask you this: if you were today to be given to write sort of the top 3 priorities of our country. In all areas, economically, we need investment, we need technology, we need all sorts of things. What would you place as your top 3 priorities of our country right now, given what we face?
Let me say this, the people don't trust government. People have lost trust in government. Because if you have gone through 22 years and you campaigned on, I'm coming to do change, I'm moving away from this, and you come and, for instance, there was corruption under Jammeh, and you investigate, Jammeh Commission came out with all kinds of things, and you come, and in your first 5 years, there are so many allegations of corruption, and nothing significant has been done. Do I trust you? I don't trust you.
Well, they will tell you. And the issues of corruption. But this is exactly what we were talking about. How bad practice, incompetence is really embedded in the system.
So that is
this
where...
This is precisely where it's coming out.
Let me tell you, if I was in government day one, one of the things that we could have done as first point of call, the laws that were manipulated or amended in the Constitution that were done through Parliament, you go through the same Parliament and say, take this back to where it was. Number one.
I have to say, John. No, but before we come on to number 2, I have to say this. It's really easy to say that if I were in that position, I would have done A, B, C, and D. The very fact that you are not there, you see, being there gives you a different reality.
Let me tell you.
You become a different John Jai.
No.
That's really what the reality is.
Leadership in
That's
Tango.
really what we understand.
I have gone to sat with all kinds of people. Leadership in Tango has not shaken my roots.
No, but let me tell you. The level of power you have as a president,
I know
it's a different scale. The scale is different.
You know what?
And the reality is that it's difficult to know. It's difficult to know. It's difficult to know.
Is it Michelle Obama that said that power reveals who you are? And I even had the president quoting the person. So who you are, really.
But this is it. Right now, you do not know who you are.
No.
The power will reveal it.
No.
So you cannot tell me anything right now. But this is really what we say. But that's what it means.
Let me tell you this. In leadership, if you want to effect change, especially in political leadership, if you want to effect change, you put it day one. The people around you, the policies you put in place, and the safeguards you put around yourself. If from day one, the president had prioritized anti-corruption, to fight corruption, and ensure that there were safeguards around him and every institution.
But he will tell you that he did.
What was done to fight corruption?
Working on policies and on legislation, which you said one is to lay the foundation. You know how many laws have been? You know how many laws have been passed in between 2017 and now? Why is anti-corruption not a priority? If corruption that's the National Assembly. I cannot blame the president for that.
No.
Because it's in the National Assembly, isn't it?
When this government came into power, which laws did they amend in the Constitution? Do you know? age. Who was age affected? And the thing about the political, if you are suspended from assembly, you are no longer a member of the party. Those two that they were interested in.
But so with the connivance of the National Assembly, the National Assembly passed it. But the National Assembly passed it.
But who brings it to the National Assembly? Is the executive.
But these are two different processes.
No, my brother.
They could have rejected it.
My brother.
So they could have rejected it.
Yeah, but they accepted it too.
Yeah, so it's the National Assembly more.
So can I ask?
They're also part of it. They must be part of it.
Can I ask this? Jammeh amended the Constitution 50-something times. So why would you come and just touch two of the amended aspects of the Constitution and leave the rest?
But that's hypothetical.
That
is hypothetical.
Mr. This is not rocket science.
They must have had their reasons for doing that.
This is not rocket science, my brother.
But don't you think
it is priority? What do you prioritize?
Okay, let's put it this way. Instead of picking one or two examples, the general thrust.
Yes.
You've even said that the human rights situation has improved.
Indeed.
So many different areas.
I agree.
In that area, things have improved. But that's really...
Things are changing.
Things are changing. And even good governance.
But
you must say that if you compare...
of course.
Obviously.
We have a government that...
So we've been on an upward trajectory.
I agree. But the pace... is what is frustrating the people.
But that's a different point.
But listen, Mr. Mboj, you talk to any Gambian now in the street. You talk to the young people. People are frustrated. You know what that is? It's a recipe for disaster. Because if you, number one, as leaders, you manage the expectation of the people. You understand? Let people understand what your challenges are.
So the expectations are too much?
If the expectations are too much. But this also what I'm saying, that for us, our part, what we have done sometimes is to contain situations. Because as leader of civil society, sometimes I'm under pressure. Hey, won't you make a statement on this? Won't you react to that? Before I make a statement, I would call government officials. I can call the IGP. I have a very good relationship with the IGP. I can tell you. I can call him anytime. He will pick my call. If he doesn't pick, he will call me back. John, what is it? I said, sir, this and this and this. Okay, we will take care of it. John, this and this. How do you do whatever? That's the relationship we have. But this is because also you as a leader, you have this consultative approach. And the people are now able to trust your leadership and call you and ask for advice. And you can also give them. But the final decision comes from them. So we have called, we have never, as a Tango executive, we've never met the president. He's visited every kind of person and groups of people, international, local, have visited.
Have we ever requested to
yeah, we requested. And they decided to give us audience, but they said only 5 of our executive were to see him. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. Because when it suits them, 20 people can go and visit him. Why should you curtail our executive going on to 5? Perhaps I don't know, Mr. Mboj, let's call a spade a spade. If you want to deal with people, it must be on a basis of trust. If you don't trust me to bring my whole executive, who am I going to tell in my executive that sit back? I am not that kind of a leader. But that because the president calls, so I compromise my standards.
But let me do this. Strategically, it's really important for NGO civil society to be liaising with government regularly.
But government should open the door.
For national development.
Government should open the door.
Then you keep on knocking.
My brother, listen. I don't have time to be knocking on government doors all my life.
You must have time.
No, listen, I don't have time. So if it is only to meet the president that is going to make my leadership effective, then let my leadership not be effective. But there are other things that we've done in 6 years that are more important than meeting the president, because sometimes meeting the president is just, you meet, okay, we've listened to you. Sometimes nothing is done after. So when the president said 5 people, we said, no, we have an executive of 9 or 10 at that time. We cannot leave anybody behind. I mean, that was it. They didn't call us again. But they've been knocking on our doors. They've been knocking on our doors for consultations.
But
the development plan.
But this is the whole idea, that you must really collaborate
together. Let me tell you.
This is the idea.
You know what is frustrating dealing with government? Sometimes it's the night before a meeting that you receive an invitation. Sometimes invitations come when the meeting is past. Do you know how many sacrifices we make on a daily basis? Put other activities aside and answer to government because you want to be relevant, because you want your voice and the voices of those you represent to be on the table. So you can be called the night before, you run to a meeting. And it is inconvenient. You know what I used to do?
Some people think that you're really meddling in politics.
No, but that's not meddling.
When you should be really focused
you know how many policy decisions
on social projects.
No, but that is the thing. This is not politics. If they call you about the development agenda of the country, is that politics? If they call me the night before,
but there's politics involved because I'm sure certain political considerations decided the agenda.
No, but
that's why they call it political economy.
The development plan for the country.
Together.
The development plan of the country, really, I look at it as the development plan. I don't care what kind of political agenda is there. If there is a political agenda, and I discover that this political agenda is not good for the Gambia, I will point it out. And that is why our voices.
But how can we separate the political from the?
But why should you separate it
from economics?
Why should you separate
together?
It?
So, but
what if the political is positive?
What do you mean by the political agenda? I don't know what you
brought
mean.
About the political agenda. I'm saying, if there is a political agenda, some political agenda could be good.
I mean, political aspect. There's a political aspect in taking decisions about the country.
You cannot remove the political aspect from our daily life. That's why one of the philosophers said man is a political animal.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying
it's a much longer term.
What is bad is a partisan agenda that is not in line with the agenda of the masses. For instance, you want to build a road in a place that is not strategic, but just because of political expediency, you want to build it there. So if that comes out, and we know that that community really, what they need is a water, they need pipe-borne water. We will tell the government that don't waste your time building a road. There is a market that is built somewhere in the West Coast region. I learned that it's a market during Jame days. It's a market that the sheep and goats and chickens go there because it's out of the community. But the guy built it there because for whatever white elephant project. So
do you mean to tell me that before government takes any decision should go and consult people? Is that
the people on the ground? If I come, I say I want to buy Mboj a suit. I go and buy you a size 45 when you are wearing size 42. Does that make sense? When I ask you, Mboj, what is the size of your suit? Because I want you to wear it.
Absolutely.
So if you go
now
to...
let me tell you. I got your point. I got your point. Now let me put this point to you. I once listened to Lee Kuan Yew. He was at a Harvard lecture. Singapore, we make these comparisons all the time. On leadership, he said there were certain decisions he took. He possibly couldn't go to the people and ask them, because they only reinforce the traditional view. Whereas what he wanted, development is radical. It's not democratic. Democracy is very conservative, but development is radical. So he said, I couldn't possibly go and ask them, especially when I created housing. I wanted all the different ethnic groups to intermingle. If I had asked them, they would have all said they wanted to stay within their own people. That would have defeated national interest. Should government always ask the people what they want? Otherwise, are we really having development? So what are we talking about here? Let us be careful here.
No, but Mboj, if I come and ask you, Mboj,
that's why I said in every question. No, it cannot be in every decision.
Not every decision that you have
That's the key.
But that's what I'm saying. But you have to also consult and hear what the people have to say.
Consultation.
But that is where what government could do, and this is where the partnership between government and civil society could be very effective. You could deal, I mean, in every community you have one civil society organization or the other. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Send a message to Tango that we want to go to URR. Can you have anybody there that can do us a quick assessment of what the development needs are? We used to have an organization here that Jame messed up called Propath. You know what we used to do? We used to go to the communities, every region, ask what are your development priorities. We bring that, the development priorities, bring representatives from the region, bring them here. They have an interface with the Ministry of Finance. Finance will now say, okay, instead of finance just sitting here and say, West Coast region, we are going to do this, this, this. They hear what the people say are their priorities. Finance takes what they feel are the people's priorities and what the budget can accommodate. And you now put that in the budget. So you see how now the people are saying, okay, this government is not just doing its own thing. It's listening to us. So you have this thing of your dignity is now being protected as a Gambian. Somebody is listening to me. Does that not make sense?
We're coming really towards the end. So the future of NGOs. There's an interesting concept about, I think, propagated really by people like Firoze Manji, the Kenyan activist. The idea of the license freedoms that NGOs give. They said NGOs work within structures.
Yeah.
So they try to fix little things as they come up, little problems as they come up. But the bigger, what he called emancipatory freedom, you've not been going into that, and perhaps that's the future. Yeah, I'm really projecting towards the future. Right now, what we have, NGOs have a lot of impact, they have a lot of influence, but that is only revealing also the breakdown of our governance structure. That's why they came in to fill it. But moving forward, given that it's here, rather than perhaps what he calls the license freedoms, fixing here and there, advocating here and there, but you never touch the underlying imbalances that create this huge inequality anyway. The emancipatory, they call it, freedom of individuals. What do you think about this, putting it in the context of where we see NGOs going?
You see, but this is where, for me, my frustration lies. And as I said to you earlier, before we started the interview, if I was in government, I would walk towards closing NGOs. Because if governments were doing, in fact, before government is angry with civil society.
Is this a species of class suicide? No, he used to call it.
Before government is upset with civil society, you have to ask, why has civil society come up? It's to meet a need. All these victims groups that have come up from 2017 to now is because certain things have not been done in line with the TRRC recommendations. So over a year, the recommendations are out. There are things that are to be done. Government is not, you are taking time, you are doing reparations bill, you are doing this, you are doing that. People are still suffering. So who takes care of those people suffering? So the thing is, the higher road, Mboj, development is not difficult. Let me ask you, let me look at it.
So look at some people, it's extremely so. Our society is very tricky.
Let me tell you, Gambians are not difficult people to manage. There are certain things that government could do that would make Gambians feel that our government loves us and respects us. One, getting your national documents. How frustrating is it? Can't we decentralize? Can't we make every Gambian feel that when I'm born, I am guaranteed my birth certificate, I can have my license without hassle, I can have my ID card, my passport, my voter's card without any hassle, standing in long lines, spending a whole day at immigration. Some immigration officers speaking to you like they are doing you a favor to have your dignity as a Gambian.
Is that a governmental problem or, or a cultural problem?
It is a governmental problem.
But the people there, ordinary people there, it's more of a cultural problem, isn't it?
If government decentralized, two,
but you're dealing with the same people. We are going at 10 o'clock, the person is having breakfast, we didn't serve you.
So who
the same problems we are talking about.
From the permanent secretaries to the directors to the ministers, who is making sure that the people do their work? Don't we have appraisal systems to ensure that there are deliverables? Timely delivering of passports, of national documents within 5 days. At the same day, if the voter's card is processed within a few whatever, why do we need 10 days, 2 weeks to process your ID card?
You see,
what technology is being used?
This is the issue. Perhaps the problem is structural. You as an individual go and join it, then you cannot work.
Brother,
the structural problem, individuals cannot solve it.
Whoever is put in the position, ask yourself, how can I better this system? That is what we want of our government.
I love your passion, John Charles Nyai, and the point earlier on that if you were to take over government, you will get rid of NGOs.
I will get.
That's the most radical thing I think
That
you've
is
said
what
today.
I mean.
So that
I've said it before NGOs.
So that we will feel it ourselves.
Well, let the government do the work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of this program. Fantastic. I really enjoyed myself.
Thank you, my brother.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. To our viewers, until next time, I'm Emodumboch. Bye-bye.